Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for news stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, and let's get started. How quickly did you quit your last job and why? Before the internet really took off in the early 2000s, there were a lot of sketchy people in the real world who tried to scam people. I was between jobs when I saw an ad for part-time work in a call center. I applied and got the job. The call center was set up in a guy's garage, and the job was to call people back and try to sell them a set of educational CD-ROMs for kids. We were able to call them because they had entered a competition to win a desktop computer package. In Australia, customers of cafes and fish and chip shops filled out entries using entry forms and boxes that the company gave them. There was a real prize for the contest, but it was a sad, old, refurbished business desk that they got for free. Before the internet, not everyone had it, so this is how they got the information. The real goal was to get a group of parents who were interested in computers and educational tools for their kids. We had to call these people and try to set up times for a salesman to go to their homes and give them the hard sell. We couldn't talk about how much the software cost on the phone. Why? The software cost $4,000 over a number of payments. When I was on my second shift, the owner/manager told me to make sure to set up appointments with single mothers because they're the most easy to convince because they want to do anything to help their kids so badly. I got up and walked out the door. I couldn't afford my rent at that moment, but I wasn't about to pay it like that. 2 weeks. Were fired without any pay and had to feed their family and pay rent. This guy's ad said that his company is making underwater robots and that he needs someone to lead his engineering team. We meet a few times, and he's not always honest, but I really want to avoid hour-long commutes. We live in a small city with few jobs. But he said he had other people working on it, that it was a great product, though he didn't say much about it, and that startup founders are often strange. Join and show up on the first day. It's a rundown old garage for cars that hasn't been used in years. All of the computers and parts are in shipping containers, and I need to take them all out. They're also old. He suggests that we get the free one since he doesn't have the software licenses. Okay, I see. There is no one else there. Even though I clean, paint, and set up everything, I still can't see the underwater robot. He sometimes stops and says, if anyone comes here looking for me, I'm not here. It's not anything sketchy, it's just an ex-wife whose family's very powerful. You won't get paid yet because I'm still setting everything up. Lots of red flags. I'm a mess for 2 weeks because I'm this guy's cleaner and I want to get out of there. The second week without pay is the last straw. The lock has been changed when I go in to get my things. Whenever I text him to get in, he asks what I want. He insisted on Telegraph for the encryption as well. I tell him I'm going to get my things. Then he confronts me and says I'm not trustworthy and that he's only using me for money. Brother, you just described a job. I tell him straight out that he's the shady one and that none of the things he told me were true. I also tell him that I need to be paid today or he will be breaking our labor laws. I'm not paid by him, so I quit, and a few days later I sent him one last email telling him I'd call the labor board if I wasn't paid by a certain date. Finally pays me. The best part? In our state, he wasn't even legally set up as a business. When I filed for unemployment, he called me and had a huge meltdown, telling me that the state labor board was now looking into him. The worst 2 weeks ever. Never again. 2 hours. After college, I got a job in a new bioresearch lab because I knew a lot about how to use certain tools and follow certain steps. Within an hour, I saw the boss make fun of someone in public for telling them that they messed up a run. It's not a big deal. They were gone for about an hour and had $10 worth of chemicals at the time. You don't want people hiding mistakes from you in research studies with a lot of different steps and rules. Then I saw that we were almost out of drying agents, so we would have to slow down or stop until more arrived. Boss said, "Nah, just use it again." His finger was stuck in my chest, and he told me that as the FNG, he owned my behind. I said okay and left. That was almost 20 years ago. I quit tutoring college students to save money for graduate school. The boss thought he could put a lot of his crap on me and use me as an excuse at the same time. They didn't want to hire another maintenance supervisor, so they hired a new one and put him under my boss, who was the IT manager. The company itself was cheap. Then my boss tells me that he has to train this new employee and do some maintenance work, so he won't be around much. It's up to me to run the department since there were only 2 of us. As I planned to take over his job when he retired in about 8 years, I was eager to show how good I was. I started setting up the new servers we bought, which he was supposed to do. I also called vendors to set up meetings and took care of our licensed software, among other things that my boss would normally do, while also taking care of all the day-to-day tickets and other things that I normally do. The only thing I fell behind on was imaging the user PCs. I didn't stop, but I only did half as many as I normally did. I'm called into my boss's office after 3 weeks. He's in there with HR and tells me I'll be getting a formal letter. They paid me to use my personal phone for work, but I was talking to vendors on it during business hours. They said I wasn't doing my work because some tickets were more than a day old and hadn't been addressed, new PCs hadn't been imaged, etc. I reminded him that I was doing a lot of his daily tasks while he worked with the new maintenance guy. He said that wasn't true and that he was splitting his time between IT and maintenance so that he wasn't falling behind. He also said that he gave me a chance to take on more responsibility, but I wasn't able to do it. They gave me the paper and asked me to sign it. I signed and told them I didn't have any doubts. I quit my job by writing it down in my office and giving it to both of them. Both of them told me not to make such a hasty choice. A week later, they even told me to back out of my resignation so they could erase the write-up from my record. I turned it down and found a new job before my 2 weeks were up. I've been promoted twice at my new job and make almost 3 times as much as I did at the old one. To put it simply, F them. What was the most insane event that happened to you as a homeowner in an HOA? In the state of Texas, I have had some landscaping contractors leave flyers in front of my door offering to look after my lawn. During the time that we did not purchase their service, I witnessed them taking photographs of our lawn. Subsequently, they received a notice from the HOA stating that they had violated their notice and received a fine. Who could have possibly guessed that one of the people who were a part of the association was the owner of a landscaping company? After that, it found its way to the trees that were already present on our property when we bought it. Our front door gas lamp was leaking gas slowly, and it cost more to fix than it would have for a person to rip it out of the ground using their hand because it was so rusted at the bottom. As a result, we were required to pay a fee in order to have it removed. We had to put up a fight to prevent those trees from being cut, and I remember riding my bike around the neighborhood taking pictures of a number of houses that had trees in their front yards for my father to use as evidence that the trees we had were in compliance with the regulations. It's possible that I took one of the houses belonging to members of the association by accident. The house in question had a number of enormous trees in front of it, which clearly violated the tree height. Our case was dropped solely due to that one. We moved from the West to Florida almost a year ago, and prior to moving here, I'd never been in Florida for more than 4 days in a row, though I had been there maybe 3 times. As a result, I had no idea what to anticipate happening here. Up until the time that we moved there, we had never even heard of the town that we were moving to. Now, there was a lot of culture shock, but the HOAs were the ones that really blew my mind. We found a rental 1 month before we moved here, and although we didn't have the time to do any real research, we didn't worry about it because we didn't think that it was important in a rental. On the 3rd day of December, we took possession of the lease as well as the keys from the leasing company. It had been a full month since we had taken possession of the keys, and we had informed the leasing company that the house needed to have the weeds pulled and the front of the house pressure washed before we could move in. Of course, none of that was done, but what are you gonna do when the moving truck that contains everything you own is ready to unload? The day after we moved in, the HOA posted 3 citations on our door for weeds and mildew. My husband began to harass them by calling and emailing the leasing company. The citations were for weeds and mildew, as if the weeds had just begun to grow at 11 o'clock the morning before we took possession of the keys. Neighbors said they won't cite the rental company because they own most of the houses in the neighborhood, but they pounce as soon as someone moves in. We waited 8 months before purchasing our dream home, which is located on one of the very few neighborhoods in the town that does not have a homeowners association HOA and is populated by some of the most wonderful neighbors. Florida is unreal. The backyard of my previous home was adjacent to a community that was governed by a homeowners association. Because our home was constructed 30 years prior to the establishment of the community, we were not a part of it. We used to receive notifications about violations, and if we did not correct them, we would be subject to fines. It was never done to correct them. The legal documents necessary to reclaim our home were finally sent by them. In the courtroom, we presented a tax map that demonstrated that our property was not part of the HOA community. The judge ruled that they were guilty of harassment and dismissed their lawsuit against us to that effect. In addition to receiving a substantial refund, I made it a point to violate every rule that they had up until the point that we moved. In 2012, my association was taken to court for refusing to provide an owner with a list of its members. The president of the board simply did not want to give it to someone she did not like, despite the fact that our bylaws and the state law both stated that we were entitled to its possession. They filed a lawsuit and prevailed. A deductible of $2,500 was paid by the insurance company, which covered the remaining costs. Around the same time, there were also 2 claims for injuries and 1 claim for death, which resulted in payouts totaling almost $5 million. Each and every one of these was entirely and completely the director's fault because they did not adhere to the laws. There was an increase in insurance premiums, and the deductible was raised to $7,500. The insurance company stated unequivocally that they were raising it to such a high level in the expectation that the board would stop attacking individuals and instead act in a manner that is appropriate. 2015 year, I made a request for membership, and guess what happened? I was denied. I contacted the same attorney who had won the previous case, and I ended up hiring him because I was so incredibly irritated with the board when I began questioning money and other issues. My kid was being harassed by adults, my property was being vandalized, and it was not a good situation. I was getting threatened by other owners and board members at meetings and in other situations. It was not pleasant, and my kids was being harassed by adults. After reviewing and filing, the insurance company informed the board that they would not cover the expense even after the deductible had been satisfied. This was due to the fact that it was evident that the insurance company was not making any mistakes or errors. Rather, they were intentionally engaging in a dishonorable manner. During the discovery process, the board did not disclose this information to anyone. Rather, they racked up $90,000 in legal fees by the time we obtained a copy of that letter. Their legal representatives had been advising them from the very beginning to simply provide me with what I was entitled to adhere to the bylaws and so on, but they refused to do so. "You're suing yourself, and you're costing us money," were phrases that I heard for a period of 5 years. Blah, blah, blah. It was not because I'd done something wrong that they were racking up numerous thousands of dollars in legal bills. Rather, it was because they were attempting to conceal what they had done. To be clear, I never asked for money. All I wanted was access to the information to which I was legally entitled, and I wanted the harassment to stop. In the end, they threw money at me to settle the dispute. They bought me out at a well above market value, paid for my legal fees, and gave me a significant amount of money as compensation for my troubles. The insurance company contributed $50,000 towards it, and yes, the association was responsible for the remaining balance. In the month prior to my acceptance of the offer, a bylaw was enacted that restricted the owner's access to only the bylaws, articles of incorporation, and published public meeting minutes. The process of obtaining these items took anywhere from 3 to 9 months. Nothing that could be used to determine whether or not there was a problem, including financial records. Once that time had passed, I realized that it was a hopeless cause, that the board was resolute in their efforts to conceal what they were doing, and that people were willing to go along with it, so I appropriated the funds. The insurance company increased the deductible to $150,000, and I recently found out that the policy will not cover any legal fees. Additionally, the D&O policy was discontinued a short time ago. The current owner of the Boers called to inquire about the situation because the Boers are still refusing to comply with the state law and provide the membership list. Additionally, there are significant concerns regarding the money, which is why they've also hired an attorney. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for support.